Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to the kind of local Bamberg area here in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. And we're going to revisit a brewery who I haven't reviewed anything from in a good few years, but the last beer I reviewed from them I was really quite impressed with. So for this one we're going to return for the second time to Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller, who are from the little town of Weiher just out to the west of Bamberg, and we're having a taste of another one of their beers. And this one I think should be very special because this is one of my favourite styles of German traditional beer. So we're going to have a taste of Weiher Rolator today. This comes in at 8.8% and it is a Doppelbock, so it should be a bit of a monster. You know, you've got the Weiher Celebrator and things like this, the Paulaner Salvator, you know, some of my favourite German beers. So I'm very, very curious to see how one of the local kind of Bamberg Franconian breweries does this particular beer style, because as I say, I really love this one. So very curious to see how this turns out, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer at 8.8%. Even within Germany for a Doppelbock, that is pretty high, so really looking forward to this, and I hope you guys enjoy this review. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, link to my other reviews that I've done from Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller before. Hopefully I can add some more in the near future. I don't want it to be another 3 or 4 years before I review another one of these beers. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller then. So the Kundmüller brewery is from the little town of Weiher in Viereth, which is just out to the west of Bamberg here in Franconia, which is in the northern part of Bavaria in Germany. And this region of course is very famous for its breweries. It's got the highest density of breweries per head of the population anywhere in the world. If you want to come and try some original German beer, Bamberg really is the place to do it. But this brewery itself was founded back in 1835, and before that wine had been produced on the premises. The little town of Weiher, from what I understand, is very small, but this company is currently run by Roland and Oswald Kundmüller, who of course the brewery is named after. But the current brew house was built back in 1990, and they use exclusively Franconian hops and malt to produce their beers. But back then the capacity of the brewery was only around 600 hectolitres, but now they do around 17 brews per week, and this gives them an output of around 20,000 hectolitres of beer. But they went through an expansion period in 2008 to 2010, so quite an intensive expansion that they did actually, but they introduced bottles in 1997 as well. So unlike quite a number of the other Frankische breweries, the beer from Weiher is, and the Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller is actually fairly widely available throughout different regions in Germany. And I'm sure I've actually seen some of their beers available on the likes of Beers of Europe in England. So if you find a good German beer importer in your country, the chances are you might well be able to find some of these beers. The last beer that I reviewed from these guys was actually their Rauch beer, and the appearance of these bottles has changed considerably since then, because they were, at that time, the labels were completely different of course, but they were brewing beers and selling them in the bottles that had the kind of pop tops on them. So they've changed to the kind of seal caps like this, and their artwork, like I say, has changed dramatically since then. But the last experience I had from them, the Rauch beer, was a really nice beer, so I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. If you've watched the channel before, you will know that I love the German Dunkels and the Doppelbocks. Those are probably my two favourite styles of beer in Germany, after the Rauch beer of course, so really curious to see how this one turns out. But that's all you really need to know about the brewery for just now. There wasn't too much information available on this brewery actually, but if you want to learn a little bit more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook, you can follow them on Instagram and things like that as well. But let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So like I mentioned at the start of the video, this one is an 8.8% Doppelbock, and you know, even when you think about other German Doppelbocks, the Weiher Celebrator, the Paulaner Salvator, 8.8% is fairly heavy. You know, this is a strong Doppelbock in comparison to some of the other ones that I've come across. And this beer, it says on the back, was brewed for the 50th birthday of Roland Kundmüller. So this is a kind of special anniversary beer. So I think this one may well be a limited edition. And I'm sure Daniel actually said that to me when we were in the Getränkemarkt, and I bought this one. And as I say, one of my favourite German beer styles. So that was the main reason why I wanted to buy this one. But most of the beer, the Doppelbock beers that you'll find have titles like this. This one is called the Rolator, I guess, named, as I say, named after Roland Kundmüller, one of the owners of the brewery. And of course you have the Salvator, you have the Celebrator. They've all got kind of names that end in Tor, like that. So I think this is a kind of cool name. But as I say, brewed for the 50th birthday of Roland Kundmüller, one of the owners of this brewery. But yeah, really nicely presented. This one, quite a plain label, I guess, in comparison to the old ones that you used to get from Brauerei, from the Brauerei Gasthof Weiher. But yeah, nicely presented beer. This one there, you can see the bottle cap on this one, the Weiher beer. So yeah, brewed in accordance, or brewed in the land of Bamberg, I guess that kind of translates. I was just checking that this focuses on the camera there, but Frankish Brautradition, so yeah, basically Franconian brew tradition, if you want to translate that. But yeah, nicely presented beer. This one says best before 24th of December 2019, so if you really wanted, you could age this beer for about a year. But I guess, to be honest, you maybe could age it a little bit longer than that. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Very, very curious to see how this one turns out, because from what I understand, the Doppelbock and the Dunkel and things like that, it's not a style that's very traditional in Franconia. You know, it's things like the land beers, the Kellers and the Zwickels and things, and the Rauch beers, of course, that are a little bit more traditional to this area of Germany. So very curious to see how this one turns out. And I can already see, in terms of colour, this beer is actually a lot lighter than you would normally expect for a Doppelbock. So maybe this beer is actually, in terms of its flavour profile, it might be sort of a single bock beer, but just, you know, ridiculously strong. So we'll see how we get on with this. So as you can see with this beer, as it's come out of the bottle, you can see that it's poured a nice sort of, it's almost like a little bit like a kind of honey yellow, a honey orange sort of colour. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see there is a degree of transparency to this beer. There is a little bit of haziness to it, but yeah, it's got that typical German clearness to it. There's two fingers of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head on this one. Quite a few big bubbles sticking towards the bottom of the glass, and quite a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall, it looks pretty nice, but definitely not the colour that I would, pardon me, not the colour that I was expecting from this beer. From a Doppelbock, normally you'd expect it to be like a very, very dark sort of chestnutty mahogany colour. So that's what's making me wonder about this beer, whether it is like a sort of single bock beer, but just a very, very strong single bock beer. It's kind of unusual, actually, I guess, that they would name this one as a Doppelbock when it looks at least more along the lines of a single bock, but just more heavy in alcohol content. But looks like a nice beer. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. So the first impression that I have of this one, it's actually got a good little bit of a yeasty presence to it, actually, which I wasn't expecting. There's a nice little bit of a sweet bready kind of thing. It's almost got a little bit of a, yeah, it almost has a little bit of a banana-y note to it in there. It's it's almost a little bit soapy, something like that. So yeah, nice little bit of a white bready quality to this one. Bit of that almost kind of soapy note, like I was saying. There's almost a little touch of a Belgian-y yeast quality to this beer, which is unusual. So yeah, big white bready notes, a bit of an almost banana-y, almost like a little bit like a Weizen yeast or something coming out of the nose of this one. But yeah, some caramelly notes, a little bit of a biscuity quality in there as well. Brown sugar is definitely coming out of this beer. Yeah, the malt base in this one is really not what I would have expected at all, but like I said, the colour for a Doppelbock is very unusual. So I suspect that this beer is a single bock, but just quite high in its alcohol content. But yeah, good bit of fruitiness coming out of this one. It's got a little bit of a peary sort of, a little bit of a kind of peary apricot-y ester coming out of this one. But as I say, it's surprising this because I think there's a little bit of a almost Belgian-y yeasty note coming out of this one. It's got that almost doughy, bready, yeasty banana kind of thing that you would expect. It's maybe got a little touch of a Weissbier quality to it in some ways as well. This is definitely not what I expected from this beer, to be quite honest. If it's a Doppelbock, you know, I'm thinking along the lines of the Salvator, the Celebrator, and stuff like that. I was expecting a beer that's a hell of a lot darker than this, to be honest, and when I was holding it up to the light, it did actually look as if it was going to be along the lines of one of these nice big dark ruby beers. But yeah, with this one, big bready notes, little bit of biscuit. It's almost got like a kind of bread and buttery sort of thing as you sugar the beer up a little bit. Little bit of banana, a little bit of that almost Belgian-y yeast in there. Bit of you can definitely pick up the noble hops in here, a little touch of that earthiness, a little bit of a kind of grassy floral quality, a little bit of a lighter grassiness in there as well, but definitely some kind of bread and butter notes, and as I say, some apricots, maybe some sort of peary esters coming out of there as well. As I say, definitely not what I expected from one of these beers. So to be honest, I'm just very, very curious about this one now. So let's have a taste of it and see how it got on. So this one is the Rolator, a Doppelbock beer at 8.8% from Brauerei Gasthof Weiher in Weiher, just out to the west of Bamberg here in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. Let's get stuck in. Slange, Skål, Prost. Yeah. Now, what I'll say about this one is that this is a big malty monster. I genuinely do not think I've come across a German beer that is quite like this before. You know, this one, it's almost, in some ways, it almost reminds me a little bit of a mead. When you take a sip of this beer, it's it really is just something else, to be quite honest. Yeah, let's just say straight away with this one. I don't know what the perception of a Doppelbock beer in Franconia is right enough, and this is a fairly well established brewery, if that makes sense. You know that these guys are well known, but from my perception of German beer, they've marketed this as a Doppelbock. For me, it's, you know, for me, when it comes to Doppelbock, you think of Celebrator, you think of Salvator, you know, you think of stuff like that. This one really does not remind me of the other Doppelbocks that I've had at all. This beer is like a regular bock beer with that bigger malty presence, but just on steroids. You know, this one, it really is more like a single bock beer with a ridiculously high alcohol content to it. That's my impression of the flavour profile of this beer. And I do wonder in that case why they've not just called it a Starkbock or something like that. So do let me know in the comment section below if I'm talking rubbish with this, because my understanding was in Germany, if you get a Doppelbock, you know, it's a sort of mahogany coloured beer, chestnut coloured beer. It's got a lot more brown sugar to it, if that makes, you know, it's got a lot more brown, more sugar to it, a good bit of red fruit. You know, it is along the lines of the Celebrator or something. For me, this is like a regular bock, but just on, you know, just almost on steroids. So yeah, let me know about that in the comment section below. I'd be very curious about to know what your thoughts are on this if you're watching from the local kind of Franconia, Bamberg area. But yeah, that said, if you take away the kind of style boundaries and things like that, it is actually a fairly nice beer, but you wouldn't want to session this, I'll tell you. You know, you'd make an absolute mess of yourself if you drank 2 or 3 of these, and you know, Germans have been known to do that. From what Daniel's told me, Germans have been known to drink a good 3, even 4 of these big monster beers that you can get. So with this one, you can feel that nice bready malt base just blanket the middle of your tongue. On top of that, you feel this big oily, boozy, caramelly note to the beer. And that's where all the kind of alcohol on this one is. You can really feel the booziness to this beer as soon as you taste it, actually. So in the middle of the palate, you've just got this kind of almost ball, if you like, and that's where those brown sugary notes are coming out of the beer. Right in the centre of the palate, you've got a little bit of a sweeter caramel. It's not, the caramelly notes in this beer are not, it's not even toasted, it is just a lighter, sweeter caramel. But as you go further out from the centre of the palate, that's when you get a little bit more of these kind of biscuity, slightly grainy notes out of the beer. So it's quite interesting how this beer just sort of plays out. But as you go further into the aftertaste with this one, I find that it does just get a little bit sweeter. But yeah, I will say with this beer, as a beer on its own, I think it's pretty nice in terms of flavour. But as I say, I'm just confused as to why they're marketing it as a Doppelbock, unless there's some difference between the Franconian Doppelbocks and the Munich Doppelbocks, which is, to be honest, when beer is as regional as it is in Germany, that is a distinct possibility. But yeah, I do like how this beer is going together, but basically it's a big bready, malty, boozy beer, this one. In terms of the hops in this beer, it pretty much has what you'd expect from the German noble hops. A little bit of an earthy sweetness in the back corners of the palate. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, it's got a little bit of, it kind of just smooths out a little bit. Then you get a little bit of a almost spicy floral aromaticity out of this beer on the front corners of the palate. Then round the very front curve of the tongue, it's just a little bit lighter and grassy, and it's got that typical sort of grassy, lemony, citrusy quality to the beer too. And then behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice little oily bubble where those nice juicy fruity esters start to come out of the beer. So, I mean, in terms of a regular bock beer, the flavour profile of this one isn't surprising. It's just a little bit more boozy and alcoholic than you'd normally expect. 8.8% for a German beer of any description is pretty damn heavy, I have to say. As far as I remember, regular Doppelbocks are only around, at maximum, I think they're around 8%. I think somewhere between 7.5 and 8% is the standard alcohol content for a German Doppelbock. But yeah, as a beer on its own, it is quite nice. It just doesn't, for me at least, it just doesn't fit the style profile that they've put into this one. But as you go further into the aftertaste of this one, the bready notes are sitting there, a little bit of the hoppy bitterness is there as well, and you've got a good little bit of sweetness in the centre of your palate from this one. But on the fruity side of things, it's interesting too. As I say, that nice little bit of grassy, estery quality to the beer. There is a little bit of an almost apricot-y, peary sort of ester to this one. It does have a little bit of that almost orchard fruity quality to it as you go further into the aftertaste, mixing in with that kind of grassy, citrusy note in there. It's almost like sultanas a little bit as well, which is interesting. So I have to say, this is it's something that I've not quite come across before. I've never come across a Doppelbock that's light in colour and things like this. So it's always cool to find things like this though when you're doing beer reviews. After 1400 beers, you do want things that are going to test you a little bit. And for me, as a beer on its own, it is nice, but it's just not what I would quite expect from a Doppelbock. In terms of the mouthfeel then, definitely a full-bodied beer. Carbonation's very smooth. The mouthfeel, as you'd expect, is very, very oily. There's a little bit of bitterness to this one, maybe around the 30 IBUs mark, something like that. Lovely big malty sweetness to this, but in fairness, it does have a good little bit of a bready base to it, so the malt base is almost balanced between this bready smoothness and the more kind of malty sweetness, if you like, a little bit more of that kind of caramelly sweetness. The malt base is very, very well balanced in this one. Good little bit of juicy fruity character. As you come to the front of the palate as well, I think there's a little touch of an almost woody flavour to this beer too, which is something that you can usually get from beers that are slightly higher in alcohol content. But overall, like I said, a very, very nice beer. My only thing with this one that is a little bit unusual is that it says it's a Doppelbock, but it's this colour. As I say, normally you'd expect a Doppelbock in Germany to be a dark beer, so like I said, I would be very, very curious to hear your thoughts on that in the comment section below. But overall, as a beer on its own, it is quite nice, and I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but this is definitely not one that you want to session. I can feel this one going to my head already at 8.8%. It is a monster of a beer, regardless of whether it's German or not. Even in American beer sort of terms, this one is getting onto the kind of monster step on the ladder, if you like. So yeah, a really interesting one this, and it's been cool to return to Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller after like 3 or 4 years, but definitely an interesting beer. Happy 50th birthday, of course, to Roland Kundmüller, one of the owners of this brewery, who this, and that occasion, of course, was what this beer was brewed for. But yeah, a really interesting one this, and I'm glad that I got to review it. I just saw this in the Getränkemarkt and thought, you know, I recognise this brewery. I have to review another one of their beers, but definitely one that's tested my palate a little bit more. But let's leave it at that. So yeah, this one was the Weiher Rolator from Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller in Weiher, just out to the west of Bamberg, here in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. A very, very nice beer, but definitely not what I would have expected from a German Doppelbock. So yeah, have a go at this one for yourself and see what you think. And as I say, let me know your own thoughts on this in the comment section below, and let me know what your thoughts are on the Franconian Doppelbocks versus the kind of Munich Doppelbocks. That would be very interesting to hear too. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller as well. Let me know what your favourite Doppelbocks are from this region in Germany too, because this is a style that's not too native, if you like, to Franconia as well. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. This was the Weiher Rolator, a beer brewed for the 50th birthday of Roland Kundmüller, one of the owners of the brewery, from Brauerei Gasthof Kundmüller in Weiher, just to the west of Bamberg here in northern in Franconia, northern Bavaria in Germany. Until the next time, Slange just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. Skål, Prost, cheers, Slange, whatever it is. Beer's going to my head a little bit. Cheers.